Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the webinar today. In this webinar, we're going to talk you through the tips for writing postgraduate applications essays. And it is important to note that these are not only relevant for Mastercard Foundation Scholarship at the University of Edinburgh, but they are also transferable to other applications you may be interested in other universities. For introduction, my name is Faithy Ngaira. I work as recruitment coordinator at the Scholars Program, and I'm joined by my colleague, Pete Kingsley. For a start, I will briefly present an overview of the application to the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program at the University of Edinburgh, which is currently open for September 2024 entry. And afterwards, I will hand it over to Pete, who is going to walk you through the webinar topic today. So I will just share my screen. The Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program at the University of Edinburgh invests in a community of skilled, entrepreneurial, and compassionate future leaders across Africa. We believe that young people should be empowered to address the impending global issue of climate change. And for this reason, you will notice that all our study programs supported by the scholarship engage in one way or another with the theme of climate change and sustainability. We offer scholarships for both on-campus and online study options. Our on-campus scholarships are for Master of Science programs only. As you can see, they're listed there. And whereas for our online scholarships are for both master's and postgraduate diploma. The online master's program is studied for over a period of 3 years on a part-time basis, while the postgraduate diploma is studied over a period of 2 years on a postgraduate, on a part-time basis. Applications for the September 2024 intake are currently open, and all applicants have to submit their applications by the 7th of December 2023. This is next month at 5 p.m. UK time. You will notice that if you have been looking at other Mastercard Foundation scholarships within other institutions like Oxford or Cambridge, their process differs a little bit from our application process. For these other institutions, you must apply for the degree program first and then apply to the scholarship. But it is important that we highlight for the University of Edinburgh, we encourage all applicants to apply for the Mastercard Foundation Scholarship only, and only after they have been awarded the scholarship, they can apply to their degree programs. So if the Mastercard Foundation Scholarship is the only scholarship you are interested in to applying at the University of Edinburgh, then please apply for the scholarship only. And successful applicants will then be invited to apply for admission to the University of Edinburgh through the guidance of the Mastercard Foundation team. And in terms of eligibility requirements, we require that all applicants should fulfill the academic requirements of the University of Edinburgh, in particular to their degree programs of interest. So it will be important that before you submit your application for any of the programs that you're interested in, please visit the postgraduate entry requirements page at the University of Edinburgh, find out which requirements are specific for your country, and only after you have fulfilled this, then you should look back at the scholarship program. Something else is in our application, we require that you have your official undergraduate degree certificate and transcript. So by the 7th of December, all those interested in applying to the scholarship should submit their undergraduate degree certificates as well as their official transcripts. In addition to other requirements that are listed on our website, It is important that all applicants demonstrate a track record of leadership and service within their communities. You might be wondering, how then are you supposed to demonstrate this? And this is why we have this webinar, so that we can take you through some of the tips of writing a postgraduate application essay. And this brings me to the main topic of today, and I'm going to hand it over to Pete Kingsley. Pete.
Yeah, thanks so much, Faithy. I really appreciate that overview and introduction of these scholarships. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So as you say, and as anyone has had a look at the application form so far, it's asking you all sorts of different questions, different facts and figures, but the main thing that we're assessing you on will be a series of 250-word essays, or mini essays, if you like. And I thought, rather than going through all of these questions one by one and seeing about different ways in which you might approach them, I think it's perhaps more helpful to look at the one big question and to see what would be what actually makes a good application essay. So to explore this, I will share my slides. Okay, thank you. Thanks for bearing with me while I sorted that out. So yeah, what makes a good application essay? And it's going to go to a couple of key things that we're looking for. There's several really important entry criteria that we're interested in. And I think they really come down to your ability to thrive at the university academically. And then beyond that, it's about your demonstrated and ability and potential as a transformative leader. And really what we're primarily going to be talking about today is the second one, to show what it means to demonstrate your leadership ability. That's the really key one. And let me explain why. Because when we're looking for your ability to thrive academically at the University of Edinburgh, that I think is primarily demonstrated through your track record, which is basically your degree outcome primarily. And although you have an opportunity in the essays to give some context to that, perhaps explaining difficulties or particular challenges that you had with your struggle to understand, that you had with your studies, excuse me, and to maybe share some part of your story, which would help us understand where you're coming from. Ultimately, it's your academic performance that will really help you stand out there. So it's the second one, to think about demonstrated ability, which is to say the things that you've already done, and then your potential as a transformative leader. And I think that comes both in an ability to reflect on the things that you've done so far and think about things you might want to do in future, and then also having a really clear future plan. So let's dig into that a little bit more. What you're going to need are examples. You're going to need little stories, vignettes, anecdotes, whatever you want to call them, that give you a chance to demonstrate the full range of your talents and your skills. I think that some general principles are, you do want to choose something that's fairly recent. We sometimes read examples where applicants who are going for postgraduate study, but they're talking about things that they did in high school, or things where or even earlier in life than that. And although they can be interesting, I think we're generally looking for things a bit later in life that you've done either during the course of your undergraduate study or since graduating. As Faithy mentioned, our scholarships are themed around climate change and sustainability. So although it's not essential that you've worked or have studied in an area that's closely related to climate change and sustainability, though certainly that's helpful, it is important that you show how you might link your particular skills and experiences to these issues. So perhaps you've worked primarily with issues relating to refugee issues or in women's health. You might want to reflect on how the particular skills that you've used in that area might allow you to help out and address sustainability or climate change in some ways. And lastly, I think sometimes people interpret leadership to only refer to a formal position that you've held, like the president of an organization or the chair of something. But I think you can think about leadership in a much wider range of context to that. Anywhere where you've had an opportunity to show off your skills and to influence other people and to bring about change. So I encourage you to interpret leadership broadly. So let's think about these examples and what else might make a good one and what you should be looking for. I think at postgraduate level, we are, it's the first thing to say is we are looking primarily for people who have demonstrated achievement, not just this is something I'm interested in, this is something I'm aspiring to do. I've read interesting things about sustainable energy, I've read interesting things about this, but we are looking to see things that you've actually done. I think also, we appreciate that comes in context. We have some applicants who are quite young, perhaps in their early 20s, having just graduated, and we have some older applicants, and we understand that not everyone has had the same opportunity to contribute. But we are looking for things that you've actually done. I think that some weaker answers can often focus on and give quite a good account of something, but it's actually quite a small example. It might be, I organized a workshop, or I organized an event of some kind where it's interesting and it's good, but it's perhaps quite small in scale. I think it can be better to try and put your work in a slightly broader context. So for instance, have you organized a range of workshops and try and tell the bigger story of that, rather than just, oh, there was a dispute between colleagues and I used my leadership skills to resolve that. I think try to think a little bit bigger than that. I think something that goes along really closely with that, and one that you'll see when I share some examples later on, is that it's incredibly helpful for you to be able to quantify what you have done in some way. And quantify, but I simply mean use numbers. How many people did you influence? How many people came to your event? How many people were you managing? How long did it go on for? And sometimes we have description of a project that sounds interesting, but there's no way to tell whether this was a project that went for 2 weeks or for 2 years, or whether it was a very small scale project, or whether it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think something that gives you some example of the scale of that is really important. I think also it's the leadership examples want to show ideally a bit more than just simply your capacity to deliver and organize something, because leadership is a little bit more than just management. It's also about reflecting your values, your passions, the things that interest you, the things that drive you. So ideally the example is not just I delivered on an impressive project, but also the project represents something that I think is important and change that I think I want to help bring about in the world. So I think that's an important aspect of that. And lastly, I would say this reflective capacity is very important. An ability to not just describe what you've done and the skills that you used to do it, but to say what you took away from that. We're not expecting every example to be some kind of perfect version of oh, everything went perfectly well. It may be that it was a project that had lots of ups and downs in it. Complicated projects often do come with parts that go well and parts that go not so well. And you may go in with an understanding of what the problem is, but perhaps your understanding of the issue you were working on was changed by your work. I think being able to show off those kind of skills are really useful. And the bit you can't see by my head there, it says, let me see what that says. It says, yeah, do you have skills that you would like to grow and develop further? So yeah, are there things that, yeah, I felt like I was able to show off these leadership skills, but there's more I have to learn as well. So how do you do this thing? If this is what's on your shopping list of different things you want to show off, your reflective ability, some of the skills that you have, but then also your passions and your values, how can you try to do this? Well, if you've prepared professionally for a job interview or a similar opportunity like this, you're probably aware of some of the kind of formats that are quite useful to use. So one format I would say is work through, set out the context of what you're trying to do, explain the problem of what the issue was that you faced, explain what you did, and then explain what change happened, and then have that reflective component. You've perhaps heard a very similar idea to this used with a different acronym, STAR, for situation, task. Oh, wait, have I got that right? Situation, context, I think the task, and then the action, and then the result. I think I've got that the right way around. But this thing where you're taking us through in what is in its 250 words, so you do have to be concise, what happened, what the situation was, and how you attacked that situation. And I think this is where it's really useful to particularly think about the context, because your essays are likely to be read by someone who is not necessarily familiar with the country that you work in, the country that you come from. They may not immediately be able to bring to mind what it is to work in a marketplace or to work in a business there. So I think it's really helpful for you to be able to set that out. And that is an opportunity to showcase your skills for intercultural communication as well. So let me look at a couple of different essay examples and talk you through those. And I'll give you one example that I think is promising, but that is underdeveloped, and then I think a much stronger and better example there. Okay, let's look at that first example. So I'm just going to read it. It's not going to be the most exciting thing, but I think it's important for you to get a sense of what we're talking about here. Okay, so it's answering a question, and these two examples are both going to be answering that same question. And it's similar to one of the essays that you'll have to answer. Tell us about a scenario in which you've needed to show leadership, how you approach this, and what the outcomes were. So it's this thing what we're talking about. Let's give us a single example. And I think that's quite important in that it is asking for a specific scenario. It's not asking for your general thoughts on leadership or what makes a good leader. It's asking a specific question. Give us an example here. So it's really important to take that away from the question. Okay, let's go. Leadership being defined by how you lead, it is inevitable. Your team will look up to you and remember how you led them. As the Women's Commissioner for the Department of Social Sciences in 2016-17 academic year, it was my core responsibility to see to it that the welfare of the students, especially females, were addressed. I realized that the students lacked basic knowledge on campus life upon gaining admission to the university and lack entrepreneurial skills. Hence, during the department's annual week celebration, I invited a female dignitary as our resource person for the program in the person of Dr. Bettina Smithson. She delivered a talk on the topic, and as a result, the students were able to understand the various mechanisms through which academic and social stress could be reduced for a better stay on campus. A workshop was also organized for the students, which gave them some prerequisite skills to help them have entrepreneurial opportunities aside from schoolwork. So when I look at this essay, there's definitely some things I like about this. It's showing an interest in the affairs of others. It's showing the ability to organize things and deliver something. I think it's, the ability to size up a situation and realize something was lacking and deliver that. So I think there's quite a lot to like here. I think where it might have some limitations, well, for one thing, there's a typo in there, which is a little bit annoying. Workshop was also organized. It should be organized. So that's a little bit frustrating that it wasn't more carefully prepared there. But I think more seriously, it's quite difficult for me to judge the scale of this work. It's talking about identifying an issue and then they organize a workshop. Now, for the individual writing this, it might be obvious to them that this was a really huge event, but I don't know whether 10 people came to this seminar or 1,000 people came to it. And I don't know if there was just this seminar or whether there was other events going on as well. And because of that, it's hard for me to give this the highest marks on this because I just don't exactly know enough about the situation. And I would love also to see the candidate reflect a little bit more on what they've taken away from this situation. If they were facing a similar situation in future, is there an even better way they could have addressed this? So I think this essay is okay. It's certainly not disqualifying, but I think it has its limitations here. Okay, let me show you one that I think is better. Same question. But they've answered it in a different way. It's a little bit longer too. It uses the full 250 words. I had an opportunity to demonstrate leadership skills during my internship experience at a startup fashion company relating to their manufacturing processes. I was promoted to be the assistant manufacturing lead in 3 months, where I took more leadership responsibilities by leading a team of 6. So already here, I'm starting to get a sense of scale in that I know how many people they're managing and I have a sense of what's going on here. Okay, let's continue. we were experiencing challenges within the team because the department lacked clear processes for tracking the use of materials such as dyes and other chemicals, and because some members of the team had not been properly trained in the use of equipment. This led to both additional costs using chemicals excessively, for instance through failed production runs, but also environmental problems when materials were not disposed of properly. See, I find this context quite helpful. I don't know anything about fashion or clothing production or anything like that, but they've explained the situation in a way that I can make sense of. Let's continue. I worked with each member of the manufacturing team to identify and provide for their training needs and organized a series of 5 half-day workshops on using our equipment more efficiently. 5 half-day workshops. I'm starting to get a sense of the scale of the work that they did. Importantly, I also asked the team to design targets for reducing waste. I felt that the goals agreed by the team, rather than imposed on them by a manager, would be more inspiring and clearly understood. I also participated in the recruitment process, hiring and overseeing the induction of 3 new colleagues. So I get the sense here also that this colleague's growing in responsibility, and the way that they describe agreeing these targets together, that's starting to give me a sense of their, not just their capabilities, but also their values as well, and what they think, what they see as leadership. Let's finish this example off. Over 6 months, we were able to reduce our use of toxic dyes by 45%, with a similar reduction in costs, even as overall production increased. Since then, I have worked in a consultancy role with 2 other companies seeking to make similar changes. This work has inspired me to use efficient business practices to make environmentally friendly changes, and reminded me that collaboration and empowerment can be more powerful than top-down management. Again, I really like the way that I have a sense of scale, I have a sense of what the change was, but I also have a sense of the values and the passions of the person who's written this essay. So I think this is a much stronger essay. Okay, let's wrap up here and make a couple of other observations on what I think makes a strong essay. Some of your essays they're written in 3 different tenses. Some of them are asking you to write about things that you've done in the past, reflecting on past examples, what you've learned from those. Some of them will ask you to talk about things that are happening now, that you're working on now. But it's also very important to show what your future plans are, because ultimately the purpose of these scholarships is to help individuals bring about positive change in the world. So I think that future plan is really important. And I think for me, you should be able to talk about what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, and what you plan to do in the future. And it should all hang together. At least in the way that you tell the story, there should be a thread that links these things, whether it's skills that you've learned along the way, or whether it's a particular interest that's been consistent throughout. So I think it's useful now, while you still have a little bit more than a month or so to submit these essays and to prepare these essays, to think about, how do I want to tell my story in terms of what's happened in the past, what am I doing now, and what will I do in the future? So think about that connection. And I think also you want to be striking a balance between having an ambition that is impressive and to bring about change. I think if you don't just want to be saying, well, I hope to graduate and I want to go back home and do the same thing that I'm doing now. But also, you don't want to say, I expect to become the president of Nigeria within the next 18 months after graduating. I think you want to be able to show what is a realistic progression there. I think just finally, and I hope this is not finishing on a sort of negative note, but it's worth noting there are a couple of common pitfalls and things that are unhelpful. I think sometimes we do get a lot of essays that are just not prepared as carefully as they might be, and I think it's really hard to give a score, a good mark to an essay that has lots of mistakes in it. I think if you do have the opportunity to write it on a laptop where you can look through it carefully rather than doing it on your phone, I would encourage you to do that. I think also, this also is a big part of the future question. We get a lot of essays where people say, I really want to study abroad. I've always wanted to study abroad, and it would be really exciting for me. It would take me to the next level in my career. But they don't really explain why they want to study a specific degree program. And you get the sense sometimes that they'd be happy doing almost anything so long as they got a chance to study abroad. And I think the better applications show that they've done research into a particular degree program and they're able to demonstrate, yeah, this is how this degree program will be able to help me. I think lastly, we realized that scholarships can be very important for our applicants, and there is a lot of pressure to get them. But I think our strongest applicants have opportunities elsewhere because they have very impressive CVs, they have very impressive accomplishments. So I think sometimes when applicants communicate a sense of like, if I didn't get this, there would be nothing for me, it would be a disaster. I think I understand, and I want to be compassionate to where that is coming from, but I think it is not helpful for us in that we are looking for applicants who are very well qualified and are likely to have different kind of possibilities elsewhere. So those are the main things that I wanted to share with you about things that I think make a really strong application essay. As I say, I haven't gone through all of the questions individually. That's for you to do and to work out how you want to use those questions to tell your story. But I hope it's given you a sense of the different things that would make a really strong essay, and hopefully it's given you some ideas about how you want to write those questions. I want to hand back over to Faithy now, as we have a little bit of time to both wrap up and answer some of your questions, I think.
Thank you very much, Pete. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A area, which we are just going to respond to and then wrap up the webinar. So I'll summarize the questions for you, Pete, because I think they're very targeted towards your presentation. So you spoke about timeline as writing experiences within a timeline that is fairly recent. What actually accounts for fairly recent? Is it up to 5 years? And then the other question is about, it seems the focus of the Scholars Program in Edinburgh is big on climate and sustainability this year. Would anyone who has other experience, for example, enabling inclusive communities through women empowerment, will they have a chance to, showcase their work in as much as our focus is on climate and sustainability?
Great, they're both really good questions. Maybe I could answer the second one first and then come to the first one. So yeah, so question of I understood that question, that was like, maybe I'm interested in working in climate change and sustainability, but so far I've been working in a different area. And the example you cited with women's empowerment and something like that. Have I understood that question correctly? Yeah. So I guess what I would say there is, it's great, and we don't expect all of our applicants to have been climate activists or to have been working in sustainable energy or working in environmental protection or conservation for their whole lives. People come from lots of different backgrounds, and our current scholars do. But what I would like you to do is to show us what the link is, show us the connection, show us why you become interested in it, but then also show how the skills that you've worked, which could be in a very different area, working on a different topic, might help you. For instance, you might say, one of the key things that I've had to do in my current role working for an NGO on women's rights is the ability to build coalitions and to work with different groups of actors, even though they may have different priorities. And I think being able to make a case of that's also very important for working on climate change and conservation. And I think that's one of the key skills I could bring. Or maybe your key skills are in communications and presentation, or maybe they're about rights-based approaches, which are also very important in climate change. So being able to show that connection. I think the other question was something like, how long ago is too long ago? I guess for that, what I would say is, I think that we understand that people have taken many different paths, including we have many applicants who have had quite complicated biographies, perhaps are displaced or refugees, worked in different countries, or have had other complicated events. So we don't have a single template of, we want to see what you've done in the last 12 months, or we want to see what you've done in the last 3 years. I think we want to hear your overall story. I think what I would say is the nature of the students or the applicants that we're looking at, people basically from their mid-20s to mid-30s, is we're asking you to reflect essentially on your working life and the things that you've done either while you were studying or since you were studying. And I think if you're only citing examples from 7 or 8 years ago without giving some kind of sense of what you've done much more recently, that might make me think, well, what have you been doing in the last 5 years? So I think some kind of sense of what you've been doing through your life. But I think still you can choose some compelling examples that aren't very recent. But I think perhaps it's helpful to know what you've been doing more recently too. I feel like I've answered that question in a bit of a vague way, but I think it depends on your own story. I don't know if you had anything to add there, Faithy.
Pete, you have answered the question comprehensively, and I hope the other attendees feel the same. So there's one last question which has come up in other webinars, and I think it will be important for Pete to address as well. It's around, the Scholars Program. One of the eligibility criteria is applicants must demonstrate financial need. I know you've touched on this, but what is the best way to demonstrate that you are actually in need without appearing as if you're begging? Or how do you avoid the pitfall of begging and coming out as needy in this essay?
Thanks, Faithy. It's a really interesting question. I guess perhaps before I answer it directly, I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a very sensitive question, and that we're strangers to you. You haven't had the chance to meet us and get to know us, but we're asking some very personal questions for you, and we want to try to do that in a way that is respectful. The foundation asks us to recruit students who wouldn't have an opportunity to study otherwise, who wouldn't have the financial means to study overseas simply by asking their parents to pay for it. So I think trying to do that in a way that feels dignified and respectful for you, I think it is a bit of a challenge. I think one way of doing that can be to talk about barriers that you faced, for instance, or barriers or difficulties that you faced in accessing education so far. And that, I think, does not have to be told in a way where you feel like you're obliged to write a very emotional sob story of things that are of difficult problems that you've had in your life in a way that feels exploitative. But it can be saying that I had to work part-time throughout my undergraduate studies, and that was often very tiring, and I had to work in a restaurant to be able to afford textbooks, or I had to do some other kind of work that was really difficult, and that was something that was quite hard for me. And I think something like that can both give some context to your academic achievements, but also reassure us that you're someone appropriate for our scholarship in terms of you don't have the private means to be able to pay for it. So I think focusing on how you've been able to overcome challenges so far can be, I think, a dignified way of doing that. Again, I don't know if you have anything to add, Faithy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, if I may add to that is sometimes, when you're writing the essay question about demonstrating financial needs, you want to show how you don't want to really explain what the challenge you went through, but mostly dwell your essay on showing how you overcome that particular challenge, that just as Peter has explained. And so if you dwell on this, I really know that it will set you that particular essay apart for you. So those are the only questions that we had in relation to essay writing. And I'll just look through the QA section real quick and realize others are related to the application process itself. I'm going to respond real quick, but at the same time, this webinar has been recorded and is going to be shared by all those who registered to attend it. We do also advise all who are interested in applying for the scholarship to always, check our socials and our website, because we do have comprehensive information on how to apply for the scholarship. The FAQ section has a whole lot of other questions that you might find responses to as well. And should you find that you have a question that is not responded to on the website or anywhere else, you're always open to email us at mcfsp@ede.ac.uk. Thank you, Pete, very much. And thank you all for attending the webinar today. We hope that you found it very useful in finding tips and strategies to submit a compelling application essay. I do hope that these elements are going to set you apart, and your applications essays are going to capture the attention of the admission committees and anybody else who will be involved in reviewing your applications. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.